name for Christians is saints. Verse 26. For Macedonia, that's the northern part of Greece where Philippi, Thessalonica are, and Achaia, that's the southern part of Greece where Corinth and Athens are, have been pleased to make some contribution for the poor among the saints in Jerusalem. They were pleased to do it. And indeed, they owe it to them. For if the Gentiles, now notice the contrast he's drawing between Jerusalem, Jewish Christians, Gentile Christians out here in the diaspora, if the Gentiles have come to share in their spiritual blessings, then they, these Gentiles, ought also to be of service to them down there in Jerusalem in material blessings. They're poor. Verse 28, when therefore I have made this 2,000-mile detour, when therefore I have completed this and have delivered to them what has been collected, literally sealed to them this fruit, I will leave for Spain by way of you. So now let's get the facts in front of us. Number one, Paul intends to go to Rome and on to Spain. That's real clear. Verse 28, I will leave for Spain by way of you. His purpose hasn't changed. I'm going to Spain, and you're my stop-off point. Verse 24, I hope to see you in passing as I go to Spain and to be helped on my journey there by you once I have enjoyed your company. So he's got two reasons for going to Rome. One, he just wants to enjoy some Christians that he hasn't met, and he wants them to get behind his mission and become a sending church for him. This is a missionary support letter. Did you know Romans was a missionary support letter? It's a fundraising letter. I want you to send me. I want you to get behind this. I'm going to need your help in Spain. You're going to be my new Antioch. I've had an Antioch to do the Jerusalem to Illyricum thing, and now I'm going to do the Spain and maybe the Britain thing. Will you be my new Antioch? That's the issue here. So he takes 16 chapters of theology to say, is that what you believe? Then get behind me. That's a great missionary support letter. So take note, missionaries. I like to read theology in missionary support letters. What are you standing for? I want to know that. What are you preaching? Number two. Fact number two. Fact number one, he's still going to Spain. Fact number two, there are poor Christians in Jerusalem, mainly Jewish. Acts 11:28 in the Bible predicts that there was going to be a famine. And Josephus, outside the Bible, tells us it happened between 44 and 48 A.D. I don't know if that's what caused this dire distress of the saints in Jerusalem, but in Judea there was a famine. Josephus tells stories about people sending people to Egypt to get food and bring it back. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? So whatever the case, there are saints in Jerusalem who are destitute. Number three, Macedonia and Philippi, Macedonia and Achaia, as Philippi and Corinth, they have taken up money. Christians in those churches have taken up money, and Paul's been collecting it. Imagine saddlebags full of real money. They didn't have checks, real gold and silver. Paul's carrying this money in his band of men, and he's been collecting it. In fact, he wrote the entirety of 2 Corinthians 8 and 9 to mobilize the Corinthian church, the Achaean church, to give to this collection. So that's a third fact. They have given money. He says so here in verse 26. Macedonia and Achaia have been pleased to make some contribution for the poor among the saints at Jerusalem. Fourth fact. last fact we'll look at. Paul himself is delivering this offering. No substitutes. Paul's doing it. Verse 28. When therefore I have completed this and have delivered it to them, what has been collected, I will leave for Spain. Now those are the facts. And the question is, why the detour, Paul? Why do you have to take it? Why is it so important? Why do you write about it? And I have 4 answers that I see in the Bible. And they all have lessons for us. The lessons for our church are huge. You might wonder, you preaching this sermon at the South Campus? Yep, that's the sermon. This is the kickoff sermon for South Campus. Because these 4 things are what we want to be. These 4 reasons for this trip are what we want to be as a church. And there are other reasons for why I'm doing it as well. Number 1, I'll tell you what the 4 are, and then we'll take them one at a time. What's at stake here is, number 1, the reputation of the gospel. Number 2, Christian commitment to the poor. Number 3, the unity of the church across ethnic lines, especially Jew and Gentile. And number 4, the love-producing experience of holy joy, alias Christian hedonism. So here we go. Number 1, the reputation of the gospel. Now, this was my first thought. I didn't get this from this text at first. I said, now if Paul himself is doing this, he must feel something really big is at stake, like the gospel is at stake in this trip. But is that just my idea, or is that in the Bible? And I know that he wrote 2 chapters about this trip, and why he's doing this trip, and why he's involved in it in 2 Corinthians. This is all shorthand in Romans, and the big picture is given in 2 Corinthians 8 and 9. So let me take you to one verse in 2 Corinthians 8 and 9, which underlines that the gospel is at stake in this trip, and I'll try to show you why. This is 2 Corinthians 9:13. Goes like this. Paul's coming to the end of his motivational 2 chapters for the gifts to Jerusalem, and he says, by their approval of this service. So people are going to see this service of all the Christians out there in the boondocks sending money to the Jewish Christians in Jerusalem. By their approval, they're going to approve of this, they're going to love this. By their approval of this service, they, the poor saints in Jerusalem, will glorify God because of your, the Gentiles, submission flowing from your confession of the gospel of Christ. Now that's a complex sentence. You've got to slow down and see what he's saying. They're going to see this gift. They're going to glorify God because of your Gentile submission flowing from your confession of the gospel of Christ. So how do you make sense out of that? What that means is, what's at stake in this trip is the power of the gospel to turn Gentiles into non-lovers of money and lovers of Jews. That's what's at stake here. The power of the gospel is at stake here to turn the world into one people who don't live for money anymore. You are submitting to my plea because of your confession of the gospel. The gospel changes what you treasure. We don't have a thing called treasuring Christ together for nothing. When the gospel grips you and it saves you, it liberates you from the old bondages like money. And so my concluding rhetorical question to you after the first point here, that the gospel